500 grand says he won't last a month, someone shouted. He signed the marriage register proudly, as if it were another contract. She looked at him as though she could already read every move ahead. You asked me to teach you endurance, she whispered. But was it about love, or something much bigger? For days she was silent. Then he saw her pulling books from his shelves, business, psychology, even financial reports. I want to know what drives this world, she told him when he raised an eyebrow. He laughed, but later placed a folder with fabricated numbers among the real ones. The next morning, he found it back in place, untouched, except for a note in her handwriting, "Nice try." At a crowded reception she raised her glass, smiling faintly. Everything can be changed, body, fate, even status. The room shifted. One of his partners leaned toward him, whispering, "If she keeps talking like that, she'll own the room before you do." He clenched his jaw, and when she slipped away with a guest, he followed discreetly. He didn't catch their words, only saw the man's pale face when they returned. She leaned close to him later. In business or marriage, respect isn't given. It's taken. The next morning she said it straight, "You can't imagine who I'll be in a year. And when I get there, your name will either rise with mine, or drown under it." He wanted to dismiss her, but those words were a line in the sand. From then, he played differently. He told his assistant to track her movements, only to receive a sealed envelope on his desk later that week, "Stop wasting your money." He invited her to a lunch with investors, expecting her silence to expose her. Instead, she asked one precise question that made a director choke on his drink. "Are you sure your numbers hold?" she asked calmly. They didn't. He watched his own board members glance at her, not him. That night he set another trap. He called a rival and arranged a staged meeting, certain she'd overhear. She did. Hours later, he found his rival texting him, "She already warned me you'd try this." And then, the first crack appeared. On his desk, a photograph slid from her purse as she left the room. It wasn't recent, years old. She was thinner, sharper, unrecognizable. On the back, in faded ink, "Not finished yet." He froze. For the first time, he wasn't asking if she was a burden or a player. He realized the real question was, had the game already started long before their bet? The photograph stayed on his desk all night. By morning, he made his choice. If she wanted to play games, he would set the rules. He called his lawyer, adjusted his schedule, and ordered his assistant, every account, every connection, trace them back to her. Quietly. He couldn't afford blind spots. That evening, he invited her to dinner at a rooftop restaurant. The city lights stretched below them. He poured the wine himself, watching her carefully. "You've been busy," he said. She smiled, not flinching. "So have you." Then she slid her phone across the table. On the screen was his own message thread with the lawyer, words he had spoken only hours before. "Transparency, darling. It works both ways." The blow stung, but he didn't show it. Instead, he leaned forward. "You want to prove yourself? Fine. Tomorrow you sit in on my board meeting. No more whispers, no sidelines. Show them who you think you are." She tilted her head, as if amused. "Careful what you wish for." The next day, the meeting began stiff and formal. His directors expected routine numbers, safe speeches. But midway, she interrupted with a single question: what would this company look like without him? Silence spread like fire. He shot her a warning glance, but the directors didn't laugh it off. Some of them actually considered it. His pulse hammered, she had just tested his throne in front of his own men. Afterward, he cornered her in the corridor. "That was reckless." "No," she answered calmly. "That was a glimpse. You don't test endurance with comfort. You test it with fire." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. A news alert, anonymous source leaks insider documents on pending merger. His blood ran cold, those papers were locked in his private safe. He turned to her, searching her face for a crack, but she only raised an eyebrow. Loyalty, you said? Maybe you should decide what side you're really on. The decision hit him then: fight her head on and risk losing everything, or draw her closer, keep her where he could see her, and gamble that he could outlast her. He straightened his tie, forcing calm into his voice. Pack your things, he said. From now on, you'll work beside me. Every meeting, every call. If you want to play in fire, you'll burn with me. She didn't hesitate. Finally, she whispered, almost pleased. From that day she sat beside him at every meeting. The directors whispered, the assistants stared, and he forced himself to act as though nothing had shifted. Yet each time she spoke, his position seemed to shrink. He countered with precision, cutting off her remarks, steering conversations back to himself. She didn't resist, she smiled, letting him believe he'd won small battles. That smile gnawed him more than any words. Late one evening, while reviewing merger fallout, his phone lit with a blocked number. A male voice spoke flatly, 500,000. Remember? Some of us want our money back. He froze. The bet, that drunken joke at the wedding reception, wasn't forgotten. Worse, it wasn't private. Someone else had been keeping score. Who is this? He snapped. The line went dead. The next morning, he confronted her. Did you tell anyone? She didn't look up from her notebook. You assume I need to. People notice what you try to hide. Her words stung because they rang true. If the bet leaked, his empire could collapse under scandal, a marriage mocked into existence, now a spectacle in financial pages. He acted. He called his PR chief, drafted contingencies, and quietly ordered an internal audit. If there was a mole, he'd find them. But hours later, his assistant entered pale-faced. Sir, a journalist called. She claims to have an inside source, someone close to your wife. That night, he followed her discreetly. She left their apartment dressed simply, no driver, no guards. He trailed until she entered a quiet cafe. Through the window, he saw her sit opposite a stranger, tall, sharp suit, a face he knew too well, Ethan Cole, his former protégé turned bitter rival. The man who had once sworn to destroy him. She leaned across the table, speaking calmly, her hands moving with purpose. Ethan nodded slowly, then slid a folder toward her. She didn't hesitate to take it. His chest tightened. 1,000 questions crashed through him. Was she betraying him? Or had she just aligned herself with the one man capable of dismantling everything he'd built? He pulled back from the glass before she could notice him. For the first time, he wasn't sure if the next move belonged to him, or if he'd already lost control of the board. The sight of her with Ethan haunted him through the night. By dawn he had made his move. He summoned a private investigator, gave strict instructions: every meeting, every message, I want records. If she's working with him, I'll know before she does. For the first time since the wedding, he felt he was taking back ground. Later that day, at the office, he surprised her with a gesture. You'll lead today's presentation, he announced in front of the board. A calculated risk: if she stumbled, he would expose her. She didn't hesitate. She stood, spoke with calm authority, dismantled numbers, and proposed refinements he hadn't even considered. Applause followed. Yet beneath the surface he noticed the tension in her jaw, the way her hands trembled when she thought no one was watching. A crack. A reminder she wasn't untouchable. That evening he pressed harder. I saw you last night, he said flatly. For the first time, she faltered. You followed me? He didn't blink. You don't meet Ethan Cole unless you have a plan. So tell me, are you here to build with me or bury me? Her answer was measured, almost too calm. Maybe endurance means learning you can't control every piece on the board. The next morning his investigator delivered photos. But they weren't what he expected. In them, Ethan handed her the folder, but the angle showed the cover, fitness and nutrition program. His chest tightened. Was she using Ethan, not aligning with him? Or was the folder a disguise for something deeper? Small victory, brief relief. Yet hours later a journalist published an article, Marriage on a Bet? Billionaire under fire. The headline ripped across every news outlet. The exact sum, $500,000, was quoted. Someone had leaked. His board demanded answers, shareholders panicked, and the spotlight burned hotter than ever. That night he returned home, ready to confront her, but stopped cold. On his desk lay a sheet of paper in her handwriting. You wanted endurance. Now prove it. Next to it was the same photograph of her from years ago, slimmer, unrecognizable, dangerous. And scrawled across the back, a single line that froze him in place: this isn't my first bet. The article spread like wildfire. Television panels mocked him, social media tore apart every photo of their wedding, and late-night hosts replayed the words marriage on a bet with cruel laughter. He had weathered business storms before, but this cut differently. Reputation was his currency, and it was bleeding fast. In the boardroom, directors avoided his gaze. A merger partner delayed signing. Even his closest advisor said quietly, "Sir, the markets punish weakness. You need to fix this, fast." He clenched his fists under the table, the weight of humiliation pressing heavier than numbers on a chart. For the first time, he felt like prey. That evening he faced her. "You've destroyed everything," he snapped. She didn't flinch. "No. I've revealed what you were afraid to face. You built an empire on control, but endurance, what you asked me to teach you, is surviving when control is gone." Her calmness only sharpened his rage. But anger couldn't stop the damage. Lawsuits threatened, stock dropped, rivals circled. He made his choice. "Tomorrow," he told his assistant, "I hold a press conference. I'll take the blame. Make it a joke before they can." It was risky: mock himself and risk losing stature, or stay silent and watch the empire collapse. At the conference, cameras flashed like gunfire. He stood tall, admitting the bet, but reframed it: "I bet on myself. On endurance. On learning to build something not with power, but with risk. And yes, I married her, and she's proven stronger than most men I've ever known." The crowd shifted, laughter faded into an uneasy silence. For a moment, he felt control return. Backstage, she approached him, eyes unreadable. "That was brave," she said softly. For the first time, he thought he saw respect, or maybe pity. He reached for her arm, but she pulled back, leaving him with questions that burned hotter than applause. Hours later, another blow landed. His investigator rushed in with photos, this time not of Ethan, but of someone else, a senator's aide, sliding into a car with her. On the back of the photo, again her handwriting: endurance means knowing when to bend, when to break. He realized then, the game wasn't about a marriage, or even the bet. It was about survival at the highest stakes. And she was still 2 moves ahead. The photograph of her with the senator's aide still lay on his desk when another message arrived. An unmarked envelope slid under his office door. Inside were more photos. Not of the aide this time, but of Ethan Cole. Same cafe, same angle as before, but now clearer: Ethan wasn't just handing her a folder. He was smiling, leaning close, as though they shared a secret too dangerous for anyone else to hear. His chest tightened. He remembered the folder his investigator swore was harmless, just fitness programs. But here, in these new shots, the cover was different. The label read, Acquisition Draft, Vega Corp. That was his next target company, known only to his inner circle. Someone had switched the files, or worse, lied to him outright. He stormed into her study. She was at the desk, scribbling notes, posture calm. "Tell me," he demanded, slamming the photo down, "what deal are you making with Ethan?" She studied it for a long moment, then met his eyes. "You think betrayal is that simple? You want a villain. But maybe you should ask why he still wants to see me." "Stop twisting this," he snapped. "If you're feeding him, I'll bury you both." Her voice was steady, but softer than usual. "If I were feeding him, would you still be standing?" The words rattled him. She left the room without another glance, leaving him clutching the photo like a man chasing ghosts. That night, exhaustion caught him. For the first time he skipped a meeting, turned off his phone, sat alone in silence. His empire was wobbling, his body wearing thin. Yet even in weakness, his mind searched for angles. He called his investigator again, voice hoarse. "Recheck the Vegacorp files. If she's playing both sides, I'll know." Minutes later came the reply he didn't expect, "Sir, the leak didn't come from her. It came from your CFO." The floor beneath him seemed to crack. If she wasn't the mole, why meet Ethan? And why let him see it? He barely had time to process before his phone lit with a new message, from an unknown number. "Meet me tomorrow. Alone. Ethan." His hands shook, but he typed the only answer he could, "Where?" The meeting with Ethan was set in a private club, dim lights, no cameras. He entered first, fists clenched, ready for confrontation. Ethan arrived late, polished as ever, carrying only a leather portfolio. "Still chasing ghosts, mentor?" He smirked. "Cut the act," the millionaire said. "What's between you and my wife?" Ethan leaned back, savoring the tension. "Not what you fear. Worse. She came to me not for secrets, but for skills. Nutritionists, trainers, strategists. She wants to rebuild herself from the ground up. And she offered something you never did, trust. She's preparing to stand without you." The words stung deeper than betrayal. He had braced for espionage, not this, his wife carving a new identity, using Ethan as her architect. "And you?" he demanded. "What do you get out of this?" Ethan's grin sharpened. "The satisfaction of watching you fade while she rises." He lunged forward, but Ethan slid the portfolio across the table. Inside, projections, photos, even a press strategy. Her future, mapped out. And on the last page, his name struck through, replaced with hers. It was a fall he hadn't imagined, his empire reduced to a stepping stone in her ascent. Rage and despair knotted his chest. Yet in the pile of documents one line caught his eye, timeline, 12 months. A small thread of hope. She wasn't finished yet. That meant time. He left the club shaken, broken. That night, alone in his penthouse, he stared at the city lights. For the first time, tears welled, not from weakness, but from exhaustion. He had lost battles, lost trust, maybe even lost himself. Yet the faint thought burned, if she needed time, so did he. And time was the one resource he still controlled. But before dawn, a courier delivered another envelope. No sender, no seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words in bold ink, "She doesn't play alone anymore." His hands trembled. If Ethan wasn't the only one, who else had joined her game? The words "she doesn't play alone anymore" echoed through his head like a curse. He could barely eat, barely sleep. Yet he forced himself to keep moving, meetings, investors, damage control. But the image of her old photograph, thinner, sharper, haunted him. That wasn't just vanity. It was a plan. She had promised endurance, and endurance meant change. At breakfast, he watched her push away pastries and pour black coffee instead. "Preparing for war?" he asked bitterly. She met his eyes. "Preparing for life." It wasn't defiance, it was certainty, and that unnerved him more than defiance ever could. By noon his investigator returned with a file. "Sir, she's been attending private training sessions. Not just fitness. Public speaking, negotiation, image consulting. 3 nights a week, booked under a different name." He flipped through the documents, pulse pounding. Each receipt, each signature, each step, it was her blueprint for transformation. She wasn't hiding it from him. She was daring him to see it. That afternoon he made his choice. If she was building herself to stand alone, he wouldn't sit idle. He called his most trusted ally, a former campaign strategist. "Help me rebuild. Not the company. Me." The words felt heavy, but freeing. For the first time, he admitted what he had lost, his edge, his hunger. Now he was ready to fight for it back. But as he took that step, the world tilted again. His PR chief stormed into his office, pale. "Sir, there's a new leak." She slid a newspaper across his desk. On the front page was a photo, him and her, side by side at the wedding reception. The headline screamed, "The bet that built, or broke, a marriage." But it wasn't the headline that froze him. It was the quote beneath it, attributed to her: "Endurance is surviving the man who underestimates you." His blood turned cold. She had spoken to the press. Publicly. Strategically. And just as rage overtook him, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number: "Tonight. Hotel Astoria. Come alone if you want the truth." He stared at the screen, heart racing. If he went, it could end his career. If he didn't, he might never learn who else was in her game. The Hotel Astoria pulsed with quiet opulence, but to him it felt like a trap. He walked into the suite, tension coiled, every sense on edge. She was already there, seated by the window, city lights framing her silhouette. "You came," she said softly, as though it were inevitable. He didn't sit. "Why leak to the press? Why humiliate me again?" She folded her hands, calm but sharp. "Because you still don't understand. This was never just about you. The bet was your game. Endurance, my lesson. And now, the world is watching which one matters more." Before he could answer, the door opened. Ethan stepped inside, uninvited, unashamed. "He deserves to know," Ethan said. The millionaire's blood boiled. "Know what?" Ethan tossed a folder onto the table. Inside were contracts, partnerships, donations, a political action committee. His wife's name was on the documents, alongside Ethan's. Not business rivals, not secret lovers, co-founders. Together they were building something bigger than his company, bigger than his name. He staggered, the weight of betrayal pressing into his chest. "You used me," he whispered. She met his gaze, steady. "No. I challenged you. I gave you the chance to endure. You wanted control. I wanted freedom." He slammed the folder shut, fighting for air. "You'll burn this all down. My company, my reputation, everything." Ethan's grin widened. "That's the point. Out of ashes, something new rises." For the first time, he felt truly cornered. Investors abandoning him, board members questioning him, the press turning him into a punchline. And now his wife, no, his partner in name only, was preparing to rise without him. Yet in the chaos, one detail caught his eye. A contract amendment dated only last week. His name wasn't erased, it was still there, in smaller print, under the title Silent Partner. They hadn't cut him out entirely. Not yet. A flicker of hope, fragile but real, sparked inside him. If he was still on the paper, then the game wasn't finished. He still had a move left. But before he could speak, his phone buzzed with a new message. No name, no number, just a line of text: tomorrow morning, the final vote decides everything. Be ready, or lose it all. He looked at her, at Ethan, at the city blazing outside. The storm had reached its peak. And the next dawn would decide who survived it. The boardroom was suffocating. Cameras lined the back wall, shareholders whispered, and the morning sun slashed across the long table like a spotlight. This was the vote, the moment that would decide everything. He entered late, deliberate, eyes scanning faces. His wife sat near the head, poised, Ethan at her side. Whispers rippled through the room. For months he had fought, stumbled, endured humiliation. Now there was nothing left to hide. A director rose. The proposal is clear: transfer leadership, restructure, begin anew. He felt the weight of eyes pressing against him, waiting for collapse. His chest tightened, but this time, he didn't flinch. He stood, voice steady. Yes, I made a bet. I wagered money, reputation, pride. And I lost much of it. But endurance, real endurance, isn't never falling. It's standing when everyone waits for you to stay down. He looked directly at her. You wanted me to learn that. And I have. A hush fell. His wife's expression shifted, still calm, but softer, touched by something almost like respect. The vote began. Hands raised, numbers tallied. For a moment, it seemed certain he would be erased. But then one director hesitated, lowering his hand. Another followed. The count finished, narrow, razor-thin, but not in Ethan's favor. Murmurs exploded. He hadn't won outright. But he hadn't lost either. His position remained, not as supreme ruler, but as equal. A silent partner no longer, but a man who had survived. She rose, walking toward him. The entire room held its breath. You learned faster than I expected, she whispered. Maybe now you understand, it was never about destroying you. It was about forcing you to change. He nodded, the weight lifting at last. And you were right. Without this, I'd still be blind. Ethan stormed out, folder in hand, fury written across his face. But no one followed. The tide had shifted. The cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Yet in that chaos, he felt clarity. He hadn't regained the empire as it was. He had gained something sharper, freedom from fear, from control, from the illusion of invincibility. He had endured, and that meant he could build again. As they left the boardroom side by side, she glanced at him, almost smiling. So. Shall we see what we can do together? For the first time, he didn't see her as an enemy or a threat. He saw her as a partner forged in fire. And as the doors closed behind them, the story wasn't of a man who lost a bet. It was of a man who turned loss into strength, betrayal into endurance, and endurance into victory. The world outside roared with questions. But inside, he felt only one truth: he was finally free.